everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name's Lauren Horan. I work in marketing at MLA, and I'd like to welcome you to our Preparing for OCI webinar. I'd also like to thank BARBRI for partnering with us in this presentation. Our presenters today are going to be Dale Durham and Jackie Bokser LeFebvre. They are two managing directors in MLA's associate practice. They'll be sharing their wisdom and advice on the whole OCI process. And I think you'll find it very helpful and informative. I'm going to hand it over to Dale now to get us started.
Thanks, Lauren. Welcome, everyone. We're so thankful you are here today, and we're so thankful you're being so intentional about your legal career. My name is Dale Durham. I am a former attorney. I've been recruiting with MLA for 7 years. I am based in Los Angeles and am an expert in the Southern California legal markets. While these days I focus on placing attorneys into law firms, associates into law firms, I've also advised partners, counsel, and in-house attorneys.
Hi, everyone. It's really wonderful to have the opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm also a former lawyer. I've been in the legal recruitment industry for about 9 years now, and I specialize in representing associates in the New York market. I also regularly counsel law students, and I'm really excited to be here today, share my insights, my tips, and help you get through the OCI process. So I'm going to turn it over to Dale, and he's going to share a bit about who we are at MLA.
To start, I think it's important you understand a bit about our company and its place in the legal market. So Major Lindsey in Africa is the premier global legal search firm. We are also the largest. We have around 240 recruiters in over 30 offices. Last year, we celebrated our 40th anniversary. We've been consistently ranked the top legal search firm by many industry publications. So we are experts in the global legal market, and we do that through a combination of local expertise as well as nationwide and global collaboration. This gives us a really unique insight into the legal market. So as you can see by these metrics, we make a huge impact on the legal industry by placing hundreds of attorneys into law firms and legal departments every year. In addition to serving top-tier law firms and corporations across the globe, we also advise law students through their OCI process at many of the top 20 law schools. So you may be wondering, what are we covering today? So during our presentation, we will be discussing 1, what is OCI and why you should participate? 2, the factors you should consider as you put your bid list together. 3, interview tips. And finally, 4, making your decision. Jackie's going to get us started.
Thanks, Dale. So what is OCI? Most of you already know the answer to this. It's on-campus interviewing. It's where legal employers and law firms, they come to your law school, usually during the fall semester, and they interview you for a summer associate position. And the goal is for you to land an permanent associate position for when you exit law school. There are some law schools that might call OCI something different, like maybe EIP or summer programming, but virtually it's really all the same and it has the same goal in mind. So if you're asking yourself, should you participate in OCI? The most likely answer is you should. Absolutely yes, if you qualify. So first you need to assess whether you can. I want you to talk to career services, talk to them about your academics and your experience. And if career services thinks that you qualify, then without a doubt, yes, I recommend that you participate in OCI. And the first reason that I make this recommendation is this is the easiest way for you to secure permanent employment. You get to land a position, before you're even a 2L, and you can secure an associate position for 2 years down the line. The second reason is this lets you explore your options. Not everyone thinks that they want to go to a law firm. Some people are kind of on the fence about this, and others know that they definitively do want to go. But whatever camp you're in, you're going to go through this process, and this process will allow you to either reaffirm your decision or open your mind to something else. We want you to have conversations with associates, with career services, the partners, the alumni, etc. It's all information gathering. It'll help you to get to the goals that you have for yourself. And finally, should you secure a summer associate position and a future associate track position, at a large firm, it's really going to open up so many doors for your career moving forward. On the other hand, if you decide that your first job is either going to be in-house or public interest or something else, you should know it's going to make it really challenging for you to go to a law firm after that. So if you're not sure what trajectory you'd like your career to take, Dale and I recommend give yourself the flexibility of having many options. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Dale to talk about 5 considerations to keep in mind during this process.
Thanks, Jackie. So there are 5 considerations you should consider before going through OCI. Practice area, geography, your long-term goals, how to assess your options, and career services. Now let's move to that first one, practice area. It's critical to understand how law firms structure their practice areas. Generally, practice areas are divided into 3 buckets: litigation, transactional, and regulatory. All of the subspecialties you may have heard about fall under one of those categories. As a transactional attorney, you could be, for example, a corporate M&A lawyer or a banking debt finance lawyer, or on the real estate side, you could be a real estate transactions attorney. So you might be thinking to yourself, I'm a law student. How do I even know? Why do I need to make this decision right now? And those are really good questions. It's important to understand that it is very, very challenging to retool or change practice areas once you've made that decision. In big institutions like law firms, associates are branded very early, and it's difficult to change course once you've gone down that particular path. Some of the most difficult conversations Jackie and I have as career advisors are with those attorneys who are stuck in practices they don't enjoy. So it's better to make a well-considered decision early by understanding the day-to-day realities of a given practice area and how it may or may not fit with your personality. Keep in mind, if you're fortunate enough to land a summer associate job, it can be a great chance to actually explore these different practice areas in a law firm setting. It may be the only time in your career when you can truly try different types of assignments. So it's important to go in with an open mind. However, not all law firms allow you to rotate practices. So if you want to try different practice areas, it's something you need to keep in mind as you're making your OCI decision. The other thing to keep in mind is that we know you probably don't know which practice area you'd like to join. And you're probably not familiar with all these subspecialties. But it's good to understand the structure of the law firm you're considering, the firm's strengths, as well as what they are known for in the market. What's their branding? So how do you look into some of these firms and their practice areas? Well, the good thing is there's a ton of information out there. A great place to start is a firm website. There are also great legal publications that provide annual practice area rankings and other firm insights. A few we suggest are Chambers and Partners, Firsthand, Law 360, and the American Lawyer. Your alumni network and career services department are also good sources of information. Now, just a quick note here for a really excellent and detailed guide to over 50 practice areas and some other goodies, please check out our Law Student Toolkit, which we have provided to you. And finally, we have an entire webinar on this topic. It's called 10 Questions to Ask Yourself Before Choosing a Practice Area. Now, I'll turn it over to Jackie for our next consideration.
Thank you, Dale. So the next consideration for us to think about is geography. A common question that I get when I counsel law students is, which city should I go to? And there are a number of factors for you to consider when choosing a geography. So the first factor is practice area considerations. Each geography is going to have a different industry sector focus potentially. So for example, if you're really interested in entertainment work, LA is a good market for that. And if you want tech, perhaps consider the Bay Area. What about energy? Texas is a really good geographic location for that. So if you have your heart set on a particular industry sector, please consider the geography that you're going to be targeting with OCI and whether or not that industry sector is viable in the geography that you're interested in. The second factor to consider is, can you actually explore the practice area that you're interested in the geography that you're interested in? So, like for example, let's say you're interested in ECVC work. There are some geographies that have this work and others that don't. And you need to make sure that you're doing your research. You want to really dig into the details of whether a particular firm has that practice in that geographic location. Now look at the firms that you're interested in and make sure that they have the practice areas that you're interested in those areas, in those geographic areas. Another example, let's say there's a firm that's doing predominantly transactional work and they don't have a heavy litigation practice, but you're interested in litigation. Investigate which geographies for that firm actually have a substantial litigation presence, because the firm predominantly does transactional work and you might not be able to do litigation in the office of interest. So the third factor to consider is market considerations. You want to consider whether or not the geography is a cultural fit for you. Does the work culture align in this geography with what you want in a particular firm? Work culture, it really does differ across geographies. For example, the culture of a New York firm might be the complete opposite of the exact same firm on the West Coast. The fourth factor to consider is the size of the market and the size of the office in the geography that you're interested in. If you want a smaller market, you might have some limitations because not every firm has offices in these markets. For example, not every firm is going to have offices in Seattle or Denver or Salt Lake City or Portland. These are smaller markets and not every law firm has an office there. And so your opportunities to summer in these smaller markets might be diminished. So again, keep in mind the size of the office. A firm that might be based in New York might have a San Francisco office, but that San Francisco office is small. It might only do litigation and you might want to do corporate work. So you might not be able to do the kind of work that you want to do in San Francisco. So again, your research here really matters. Also, it's important to keep in mind that you have different opportunities to specialize in different markets. In a smaller market, you might be able to have a more generalized practice. But in a larger market, you'll be able to specialize. So if you are interested in specializing, a larger market might be better for you. For example, if you want to have a niche finance practice, the best place to do that is in New York. So consider that geography that you're interested in and make sure that it aligns with your practice area interests. The last factor is personal considerations. What that means is, where do you want to live? Do you like to hike? Do you like cities? Do you want an area that's walkable? Where do you think that you're going to be happy? It's really important to keep this in mind when selecting a geography. And another point is, where do you think that you want to end up long term? If you want a smaller market down the road, you can start in a larger market and then move to the smaller market later. It's really challenging to do this in the reverse direction though. So the experience in a smaller market, it might not prepare you for the larger market. It's not better or worse, it's just a factor to consider when evaluating a geography. That's why we see many associates choose to start their career in larger markets because it gives them, more options. I'm going to turn it over to Dale now. He's going to discuss long-term goals.
Thanks, Jackie. The next consideration is your long-term goals. You should definitely spend time contemplating where you want to end up in your legal career. Know that there is always time to adjust your plans, and I encourage you to revisit your plans occasionally. But when you're starting the OCI process, you should position yourself as best you can to achieve your long-term goals. So let your plan inform your OCI choice. Almost as important as knowing what you want to do is knowing what you don't want to do. So a common goal for associates is to pursue partnership in their law firm. It's a good goal and can be a rewarding career. While it's good to think about during OCI, it doesn't have to be your primary factor in your decision making. If you want to make partner and as an associate, you determine that your current firm is not the right platform for you to do that, you can always make a lateral move. You can always find a firm that's a better fit. Now, many attorneys don't want to make partner, And the pyramid structure of law firm ensures that many associates leave before partnership. Some end up in legal departments. So if it's your goal to join a company in their legal department, you want to make sure that the firm you join initially is well suited to help you transition. Not all firms are created equal in this respect. Now, a quick note here. There are some practice areas that help attorneys transition better. So attorneys with corporate or labor and employment experience are those which can most easily transition in-house from a law firm. Now, this is not a bright line rule, but it's something we see a lot. So I wanted to mention it so you can keep it in mind. So another possibility is transitioning into government work. You may have noticed there's a lot of movement back and forth between law firms and government agencies. Starting at a firm with a robust regulatory practice, like many of the DC firms, that's a great way to prime your career for a move into government later. You can also look to firms that serve industries that are heavily regulated, like banking, healthcare, or energy. There's also a fair number of litigators in government. So if that's your goal, look to firms with well-established practices in practice areas like white-collar defense and government investigations, antitrust, and securities enforcement. Think of any type of litigation where the government is a party. Now, you may already know that law firm life is only a pit stop on the way to something else. What that something else is depends on what you find out that you love doing and in what area you develop an expertise. Just know that your legal perspective can add value in many sectors, including nonprofit, public interest, and business. Many corporate lawyers go on to non-legal roles in businesses of all sizes. So next up, Jackie's going to help you think about assessing your options.
Thank you, Dale. So the next consideration is to assess your personal options. And for every individual, they're going to have their own unique situation, and they're going to have opportunities related to their particular unique situation. So the legal industry, as you know, they really care about prestige and credentials. So make sure that you evaluate this with your career services department and with alumni, and try to figure out your options, and that will help you kind of navigate OCI. You're going to want to keep a couple of things in mind. How is your law school ranked? Where did the alumni from your law school go, especially the alumni who have similar credentials to you? Ask career services to share these insights with you. Try to get data from them regarding where law students with the same credentials as you got to get their foot in the door for a summer associate position. Next, you're going to want to consider class rank. Some firms, they have thresholds with respect to class rank for a summer associate position. So please take this into consideration. Next is geography. And I talked about this quite at length earlier, but this kind of brings it all together. Make sure that the geography that you're targeting for OCI gives you the best options for yourself. And again, practice area is extremely important. Dale just touched on this earlier, and it's definitely something to emphasize. And lastly, if OCI isn't the place where you end up landing a position, you have other options. You need to work with career services, look at diversity fairs, network with your alumni, look at all the opportunities that are available, to help you get your foot in the door at the most prestigious law firm role for you in the long term. Another point that I want to add is, if you have your heart set on going to a large firm, but it's not attainable for you through the OCI process or just upon graduation, consider selecting a practice area that is marketable within Big Law. If you work in a practice area at a mid-size or smaller firm that's really marketable within Big Law, when you're a mid-level associate, you can leverage those skills and move up market to a larger firm. So even if you don't get that offer for a large firm during the OCI process, the Big Law path might still be attainable for you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dale. He's going to talk about leading on career services.
So thanks, Jackie. So as she was saying, please utilize the expertise of the professionals in your Career Services Department. They are there to help you navigate this process. OCI can be different at each school, so the folks at the Career Services they are really the process experts. They also have historical knowledge of the results of how students did in previous OCIs with respect to each firm, and they may have insights into those class ranking thresholds that Jackie mentioned. They can also help you find positions beyond OCI, as Jackie said. So my best advice is get to know these excellent resources, and they're going to benefit you for your entire legal education and legal career at the start. So now let's move on to the next piece, which is the actual interview process.
Okay, so success during OCI, it can really come down to whether or not you're strong at interviewing. And Dale and I want to help you with that. So first, do not disparage former employers. You might have had a terrible experience with a former employer, but this is not information that you want to share with the firms that you're interviewing with. Instead, you want to focus on what you learned during those tough situations and how those experiences are going to set you up to be a successful summer associate. Also, don't make any excuses. That's really important. Another point I want to raise is students during mock interviews, they say that they have, all of these things, all these experiences that make them a good lawyer for X practice area, like an internship or some kind of exposure to M&A or litigation or coursework or whatever it might be. The firms, they don't really expect you to have this experience. Part of the summer associate program, part of being a first-year associate, it's to learn these things. So firms at this point in the process, they're looking for a good cultural fit. They want people who have a strong academic foundation, people who they think are going to be successful in the program, and ultimately people who will be great lawyers. Another point, please don't dress too casually. Wear a suit from head to toe, even for virtual interviews. Next, and I know this is really obvious, turn off all your distractions, turn off your phone, turn off any other forms of distraction, be present, dedicate yourself to this interview. And lastly, please don't disrespect any firm employees. There's janitors in the lobby, there's the receptionist that you checked in with, when you went into the building. There's the junior associates, the mid-level associates, the partners, administrative staff, etc. Everybody you come across with needs to be treated with the same level of respect. The firms, they make decisions on consensus. You don't know who they're going to be reaching out to get feedback on your candidacy. So the moment that you walk in the door, put your absolute best foot forward, regardless of who you interact with. Now Dale's going to talk about being prepared.
So as you can imagine, being prepared for your interview is vital. So how do you prep? A great place to start is the firm websites. These websites are marketing tools that are designed to attract clients, to be sure, but also to attract talent. It shows who they hold themselves out to be in the marketplace. It will have a section for its practice areas and where its offices are located, which can be helpful too. So for the interview itself, at a minimum, you need to read every bio of every person you'll meet with. You can learn a lot about them there. You can learn about their credentials, but you can also learn about the significant cases or deals that they've worked on by reading the press releases linked to on those bios. Look at their LinkedIn profile. Look for ways to build a connection with your interviewer before you even start your interview. So another great source of information is your alumni network, specifically those who are working at the firms that you're looking at. Most firm websites allow their attorneys to be filtered by law school. So that can show you who went to your law school. Information is also available through articles and social media. And because information is so accessible, it's a big red flag for firms when interviewees have not done the research. Think of this as a chance to show your high level of professionalism and enthusiasm. Doing good research will help you articulate why you're interested in that specific firm. So preparing also means practicing. Identify the most likely questions and practice answering them. Do it in the mirror. Be prepared to discuss your resume, your background, your strengths and weaknesses. Be prepared to answer behavioral-based interview questions, such as, tell me about a challenging work situation and how you handle it. So Jackie's now going to talk about how to approach the interview.
I want you to let your personality shine. You know, so many times when we have done these mock interviews with law students, they kind of put their interview hats on. You know, so instead of being their authentic selves, they're a formal version of themselves. And I find that this is not the most successful way to have the best version of yourself come across. The reason that this is because, again, firms are looking for a cultural fit. They're not really that focused on your experience at this point. They're focused on you as a person and whether or not you're going to fit into the culture of their firm. So just be yourself. And also be positive. And what I mean by this is, again, please don't disparage former employers. Forgo this, avoid it at all costs. Focus on what you learned from those situations and how they can be brought into being a better summer associate. Next, be genuine. You know, people want to see your human side. They want to connect with you on a human level. When you're doing your research, you know, it's important to look at the bios, as Dale mentioned, of the people that you're meeting with, and see if you're able to find anything personal. You know, maybe they have a sports passion. Maybe you went to a similar school. You know, maybe you have something in common with them that's personal in nature. You want to connect with them on this level if you can. You know, don't be afraid to bring in personal touches to your interview. Another thing I want to recommend is try to have a conversational interview if possible. You know, often with these interviews, they get rigid and it's question, answer, question, answer. You know, it's important if you can to make sure that your interview doesn't really feel like this rigid back and forth, but it has that more conversational and natural feel to it. And I would recommend that you practice this. And another tip is when you are asked a question by the interviewer and you give an answer, you know, think about how you can maybe incorporate a question at the very end of the answer that you give, you know, because then the interviewer will answer your question and it lends itself to a more natural dynamic and avoiding the question answer rigidity. So another thing that I would recommend, and I think this is extremely important, is please demonstrate flexibility. You know, I know that many law students, they're kind of definitive about only wanting to do like X type of work. Like they're only interested in emerging companies, venture capital work, or only interested in sports or entertainment. But generally speaking, you know, the law firms that are hiring you, they're hiring you to enter some kind of general corporate pool or litigation pool. You're not really expected to declare a major, you know, until a year or two into practice. And you want to make sure that you come across as flexible. You know, they need to see you as someone who is flexible and wants to add value in a variety of ways. So now Dale's going to talk about answering whys.
So Jackie mentioned this before, but because you are a law student, they know you don't have direct legal experience in the law firm setting. So they're not going to be asking you highly technical questions. Instead, it's likely they will ask you these why questions. So since you know you are going to be asked these questions, you need to have prepared and tight answers. Focus on getting very specific and very personal in your responses. This will help you avoid sounding like you are giving canned answers. Your answers should be tailored to the firm that you're in front of at that particular moment. So some examples. If they ask why you're seeking a role in New York, be prepared to explain your connection to New York City. It's the big apple is not personal enough an answer. Or if you're looking for LA, saying it has nice weather is not personal enough. Maybe you have family there and you can explain that. Or maybe you have a particular interest in an industry that's focused there, like entertainment for LA. So if they ask why you're seeking a role in that particular practice, make sure you can articulate your interest in that firm's specific practice. Perhaps you're interested in life sciences. and the firm you're interviewing with has a large roster of life science clients. Pointing that out can demonstrate your interest. Perhaps you have interest in startups or private equity firms or financial institutions. There are firms that focus on representing each type of client. Again, as I said, be diligent about your research. Next, Jackie's going to share a little bit about preparing questions for your interviewers.
Thanks, Dale. So everyone, be sure to prepare your questions ahead of time. The questions that we recommend, they fit into 3 buckets of categories. First, you really need to figure out how the summer associate program works. You want to ask questions about, how is this program unique? How is it structured? What kind of mentorship does it offer? What kind of training does it offer? These might sound like obvious things, but you're immediately interviewing for a summer associate position, and these questions are really relevant to your experience. So we recommend that you ask them. And often, it's possible to forget that these summer associate positions, they're going to turn into associate track positions if things go well. And you want to ask questions related to that because it's going to be relevant to you in the future. So ask about the associate experience, ask if the system is a free market system, how does the assignment system work? Are you assigned to a particular partner? We find that often the laterals who come to us, they feel like they didn't ask these questions early on and that they wish that they did. So this is a really important bucket of questions to think about and to ask about. And lastly, make sure that you have questions about the firm and that you have questions about the interviewers. And I know that Dale spoke about this at length, and I just want to emphasize its importance. Make sure you do your research. Make sure your questions aren't being recycled for each firm that you're meeting with. This takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, but at the end of the day, it's going to set you up for success, and you want to get that summer associate position, and this will help you achieve that. But also, again, it's going to help you decide whether or not this is the right platform for you as an associate. So consider asking the second buckets of questions as well. Turning it over to Dale.
So our next piece of advice is to be ready for different types of interviews. So typically there's a first round screening interview with 1 or 2 people, usually partners. This interview, as Jackie mentioned, is about cultural fit. It's about personality fit. It's really important to be yourself and put your best foot forward here. The interviewer is thinking to themselves, do I like you? Do I want to spend time with you? Do I find you to be hardworking? Now, if you're lucky enough to get a call back, first of all, congratulations. It's usually called a full round, which is a longer meeting with more attorneys. These interviews tend to be a little bit more substantive, and you may get into some of those why questions. You want to be ready for both types of interviews. Even if you're interviewing with your third or fourth or fifth choice, you want to do your best early so that you can earn that callback and earn an offer, so that ultimately you can be the one to decide your future for several choices. Now, that's not always possible, but that's what you're shooting for. Also, be prepared for in-person and remote interviews. I know many of the firms are returning to campus and doing in-person interviews, but you should have thought about the specific aspects that are unique to remote interviewing, like lighting, background, noise management, all of that stuff. So be flexible and plan for both. Jackie, I think you're up making the decision.
Yeah. So finally, let's bring it all together. We want you to make the decision for yourself. We want you to reflect on all the considerations we've spoken about, geography, practice area, all the research that you've done. Dale and I, we're big fans of pro-con lists. We encourage you to make one, especially if you have multiple offers. And then we want you to reach out to your network, particularly people in the legal field with questions, specific questions, and also leverage career services. And one additional point that I want to raise is, if you get an offer prior to OCI, I really recommend that you seriously weigh that offer, whether or not you want to accept or decline it. There's no guarantees that you're going to get an offer through the OCI process. And, it's challenging to have like a pending offer and go through OCI and keep that offer warm. So consider the pros and the cons of participating in OCI versus accepting your pending offer. If it's a large firm and it's one that is aligned with many of the interests we talked about above, you might want to consider taking it. Now I'm turning it over to Dale for some final thoughts.
So our biggest piece of advice sort of returns to what we talked about in the very beginning. Our advice is to encourage you to participate in OCI if you can. And if you can, take as many interviews as you can get. Even if you're not interested in law firm life, you may be surprised by what you learn, and you may benefit from the connections you make. So one piece of advice I give many of my candidates is that careers are long and the law is a small village. The person you meet in on-campus interviews could play a large role in your career. So do your best to commit to the process and put your best foot forward. So on behalf of Jackie and Lauren, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again, Jackie and Dale. On our screen now is a QR code to access our student portal. If you have not already done so, I highly encourage you to check out what we have to offer there. We have a one-page summary of this exact presentation on tips for excelling during OCI that kind of distills it nicely. Also, BARBRI, our partner in this presentation, has provided us with a digest that contains bar exam information for each U.S. state and bar exam and MPRE prep checklists. We also have, as Dale mentioned, cool presentations. One of them, the 10 questions you should ask yourself before choosing a practice area. We have info on resume best practices. So if you're not already signed up, it's a quick registration process. I think we just need your name, email, and I encourage you to take advantage of all the resources we have there. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you again to Dale and Jackie for hosting.